Hey everybody, welcome to the Global Health Impact Network Education Series. Our goal with these series is to take you on a journey to help you understand the topics in more depth. Now, today is our second episode on a very interesting topic, which is intellectual property. Now, if you're like me, you're in for a great journey in understanding IP. Now, in today's episode, we will cover what are the requirements for each form of IP. So, ladies and gentlemen, let me introduce you to our expert in IP, Mr. Joshua Goldberg, co-managing partner of Nath, Goldberg and Meyer. Joshua, it's an honor and a pleasure to have you back here with us.
Oh, thank you very much, Martin. It's great to be back speaking with you again.
Thanks. Man, if you're okay, man, let's just kick off today's episode. So, Joshua, why don't you take us on a journey to understand what are the requirements for each form of IP?
Absolutely, be happy to. So, for those of you who might or might not have seen my first episode here, there are four primary forms of IP, being patents, trademarks, copyrights, and trade secrets. So, four. Where's my camera? There's my camera. And I'll go through each one in a little more detail so you understand what they all mean. So, patents are what everybody usually thinks about first when they think of IP. That's the traditional, I have an invention. I created something new. I did something that nobody has done before. So anytime you have an idea in your head, this is what my invention is, this is what I've done new, you have a patent, something that's patent worthy, but possibly, provided that nobody else has done it before. I get a lot of questions. Do I need to have a prototype done? How far do I need to have the idea developed? And really, you need to have it developed far enough to where you're able to talk comprehensively, cohesively about it. You're able to describe what your invention is, what it does, how it works. There's absolutely no requirement that you actually have made it. When you file your patent application, that's considered a constructive act of reduction to practice, a constructive act or a legal fiction that you've made your invention just by filing your patent application. So there's no need really to wait and wait and wait. Now, if you don't know exactly how your idea will work, how your invention will work, the different parts of it, where some improvements are, maybe it's worth waiting to file. But that's a strategy question rather than a question of, is this something that's ready for patenting or not? Two totally different issues. So the way I always look at it is you don't want to file something and spend a lot of time, effort, resources on prosecuting a patent application if it's something somebody has already done before. So we always recommend to our clients that you start with a patent search. See what else is out there. See, is it really something new, not obvious, or is it something that, yeah, if you look at what other people have done, there's not really a patent here, there's not really an invention here, maybe we should move on to the next idea. And the search will pick up two of the three main requirements for patentability, whether it's new, useful, and not obvious. Okay, two of those three will be picked up in the search, the new and the not obvious. So what does that mean? New is pretty clear. It's something that's never been done before. If you look at what everybody's done, nobody has ever done exactly what it is that you're doing. Okay, that's pretty clear. I usually don't get very many questions on that. The other side of it is non-obvious. Now, what does that mean? That means I have my idea. And let's say it's this pen, right? I have a new pen that lasts 20% longer. The ink lasts 20% longer. And the way I do that is I have a different roller ball that uses less ink every time you write. Well, if I look at the collective knowledge out there for pens, what exists out there in the world, and if I take all of that collective knowledge and I aggregate it, would it have been obvious to make my new rollerball with that efficiency? Would somebody of skill in the art of pen creation, pen manufacturing, have thought, yes, I can do this. And if I take a piece from here and a piece from here and a piece from here and a piece from there, will I get my invention? That's a really tough standard. because not all people will agree on it. I've had many examiners where they say it's obvious. I say something is not obvious, and we just disagree. We look at the same documents and we have a legitimate disagreement about whether or not it's obvious. And there are a lot of things you can do to go through the process to try to go over the examiner, to go through an appeal process, whatever, and make sure that, yes, maybe you and the examiner have a difference of opinion. Here's a third party to say who's right and who's wrong. I mentioned a third requirement, and that's useful or utility. What that means, quite simply, is your invention has to have some practical utility. You have to be able to do something of value with it. So, for example, with my pen, clearly it writes. You use it as a communication tool. That's useful. That has a practical utility. There's a lot of discussion out there right now about various things that might not have a practical utility, that are not considered as patent eligible subject matter. Things such as software or diagnostic methods, test kits. And why these are not seen as not patentable subject matter, not having a practical utility, is because they're seen as laws of nature, not something that has an inventive spark or an inventive merit to it. So, like with software, it's considered as something abstract, ones and zeros going across a screen or running through a microprocessor. You have to do something more than just that abstract idea. You have to tie it to something physical or real world, something that's never been done before, to show that that software has a practical utility. The example I always use is if I have a new spreadsheet, for example, that doesn't really do anything different. I mean, maybe it has little tweaks or whatever, but it's still just a spreadsheet on a screen. We all know what spreadsheets look like. There's nothing patentable there. There's no patentable subject matter. It's abstract. But if I have software that controls a robotic arm, now I'm doing something more. I'm having an impact on the real world, something physical. I have a robotic arm that's being controlled. That's something that's clearly patent eligible. Likewise with diagnostics. If my diagnostic method or diagnostic kit only takes advantage of a natural correlation, we're measuring a certain amount of expression for this one protein in the body, and if you have that certain amount of expression, it means that you are susceptible to cancer. You didn't actually invent anything, you didn't create anything. What you found was this natural correlation that already exists in nature. That's not seen as a practical utility. But let's say we do a search and we analyze it, and we tell you after you come to us with your invention that, yes, this is something that looks like it's worth going forward. It does have novelty to us based on our search results. It looks like we have at least a good argument that it's not obvious based on our search results, and we think there's a practical utility here. What's next? Well, next we would draft and file your patent application for you. And what that is, it's separated into two main parts: your specification, which is the description of all the details about your invention, everything that goes into it, all the ins and outs, how you would do it, how you would practice it, the good effects and all that. And then you have your claims. And the claims really are the key part, because the claims are the part that define what you're protecting. The claims are numbered. They're at the end of your patent application, usually say 1 to 20. And each claim stands on its own. So you have a number of different chances to say, I protect X and Y and Z. And maybe I just protect X and Y. And maybe I just protect X. There are a lot of different ways of looking at it. And you want to have claims that are both broad in scope, so they protect a lot of property, versus claims that are narrow in scope, which protect less property. Why is that? So for broad claims, imagine if you had a huge estate, right? And you tried to say that you own an entire island. Okay, that's really broad. That's a lot of property that you're saying you own. But somebody else might have been on that island before you, and they might have a house at one end of the island. And by you saying you own the whole thing, if somebody was there before you, they basically are able to predate your rights and say, no, 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 you actually don't get this island. And because all you said is you own this whole island, you get nothing. Patents are the same way. If you try to claim everything in the world of pens, going back to my pen example, right? There's a lot of prior art out there, things people have done before related to pens. So if I'm trying to claim all pens everywhere and somebody else says, well, here's my piece of prior art that shows pens were made before, now I have no rights because I only claimed all pens. That's what I defined as my scope of protection, and clearly I can't have that. Now, if I get really narrow and I claim just my rollerball tip that gives me my 20% efficiency, that's much less property, right? I cover fewer people, only anybody who uses that tip. So that's narrower. But the plus side is it's a lot harder to say your patent rights are invalid. No different than my example with the island. If instead of saying I own the whole island, I just say I own where my house is, the boundary of where my house is. That then is much harder to say if somebody's on the other end of the island, oh yeah, no, I was here first, therefore you have no rights, because I'm not claiming that other end of the island. I'm only claiming where my property is, where my house is. Same thing with patents. Once we have your patent application filed, we would go through a whole iterative process with the patent examiner to go back and forth as to why or why not you are entitled to a patent. And eventually, hopefully, we get to the point where we have notice of allowance, pay the issue fee, and get you a granted patent. And what that means is whatever it is in your claims of that granted patent, you can stop anybody else from practicing those claims in whatever jurisdiction. So if you get a U.S. patent and I get a claim for my rollerball on my pen, guess what? I can stop anybody else from making that same rollerball here in the U.S. or selling that same rollerball here in the U.S. There are two other kinds of patents I want to mention, design patents and plant patents. Design patents are not for any utility. They don't have the same requirement of a practical utility as a regular patent. All they are is an ornamental features. So I will be protecting the appearance of this pen, the shape of it, the structure of it, just how it looks, and that's it. Now, I still have the same novelty or obviousness requirements, but no utility requirements. In fact, a design patent cannot cover something that's useful. It's only something that's ornamental. Plant patents cover plants. If you have a new asexually reproduced plants, think seeds, tubers, things like that, tubers particularly, you can protect that new plant, that new species, as long as you can show exactly what it is. Now, that's very limited. Most people do not work in the field of new plants, but if you do, that's something that's available to you. Turning now to the second kind of intellectual property, we have trademarks. And trademarks are used to protect a company name, a product name, a brand, a logo, anything that indicates a source of goods. That's a trademark. So think of some examples. Coca-Cola. You ask for a Coca-Cola, everybody knows what that is. You have the golden arches, that big M for McDonald's. Everybody knows what that is. Those are trademarks. They indicate if I go somewhere with those golden arches, I know what I'm getting. I'm getting the McDonald's level quality hamburger or chicken nuggets or French fries or whatever it is. It's a way of bringing to the mind of the consumer certain knowledge that they know what they're getting because it has this brand on it, this seal of approval, essentially. So what are the requirements of a trademark? You need something like a name or a logo that indicates this is my company, my product, and you need to be able to specify this is what I am selling under that name or logo. Now, you can have just a regular name that is text. Think Coca-Cola as text. If you protect that, that means any use of the words Coca-Cola is protected. Nobody can use it at all. You can also protect the stylized name or the stylized logo. Think of the Coca-Cola in script, Coca-Cola, or Coca-Cola in white lettering with the red background. Those are stylized. Again, they're more limited, they're more narrow because they're only protecting that specific expression, but they're also good because they're narrower. Nobody can do anything that looks just like your Coca-Cola. So even if somebody is selling something that's not Coca-Cola, but is, say, Koala Cola or something like that, that might be similar looking and has that same white script with red background, guess what? That's now a trademark infringement because it's confusingly similar. Trademark rights are based on use. So while a patent, it will last for 20 years from the day of filing, that's your patent term. Trademarks can last forever, indefinitely, as long as you're using them, and as long as people out there, the general public, will know that trademark, that name, that logo indicates the source of goods, you, right? So it's possible for things to no longer be capable of trademark rights. Even if they're still being used, they become what's called generic. Anybody who thinks of a Kleenex, for example, right? Kleenex is what many people call a tissue. Well, Kleenex has gone through a whole variety of effort to try to protect its trademark rights, to make sure it's not generic, where if you ask for a Kleenex, you only get a Kleenex, not some other kind of tissue. What are some examples of trademarks that have become void for generic use? Well, zipper. Zipper used to be a trademark, but now everybody just refers to that tab that you pull up as a zipper. Same thing with elevator. Elevator used to be a trademark term, but now everybody thinks you go into this metal box, you push a button, it goes up and down mechanically. That's an elevator. It does not tell you who's making the elevator, what the source of the goods are. It's become generic. Any box that you go into that you push that button, that's an elevator. Same thing with the zipper. So once you get your trademark rights, it's very important to monitor and see if anybody is infringing them or using them in such a way that you're at risk of becoming generic. I like to tell a story about Coca-Cola. When I was a kid in the 80s, you'd go to a restaurant, you'd ask for a Coke, and you'd get whatever cola they happened to have. And at some point, Coca-Cola realized, hey, this is going to become generic. We need to enforce our rights. And they started sending people out to all these restaurants. If they asked for a Coke and they got, say, a Pepsi, they would tell the restaurant that they had to stop. They were infringing Coca-Cola's trademark rights. And if they didn't stop, they would get sued. So suddenly you go to a restaurant, you ask for a Coke, you might get a Coke, or the waiter or waitress might say to you, hey, we don't have Coke. Is Pepsi okay? That's a trademark right issue. So is it possible to file for your trademark rights before you actually use it? Yes, it is. You can file what's called an intent to use application, which is essentially like making a reservation. We intend to use this name. We intend to use this logo. We're getting our place in line at the trademark office. And eventually, to really enforce our rights, we're going to have to prove proof of use. But at least we have the reservation made. People know that we have our name out there. This is what we're trying to do. To file a trademark application, you need to have the name, like I said, or the logo, something you could give to the trademark office to show this is what I want to protect. You need to be able to say, this is the goods or services I want to protect using this name or logo. And you file that that trademark application at the trademark office. Just like with patents, we often recommend doing a search, especially if it's a name that you're going to be using in business and spending significant amount of time on. You don't want to spend a lot of time and money branding yourself, getting that name out there, only to find somebody else has the same name and you don't have rights because somebody else came first. Trademarks tend to be quicker than patents to get and less expensive. Patents can take anywhere from 1 to 5 years, one being extreme if you follow our process and do an accelerated examination. Trademarks, I would say, generally are 6 months to a year to get a trademark right through the trademark office, unless, of course, you run into problems. The next form of IP that I want to talk about is copyrights. Copyrights are kind of any work of art. You think novels, music, the hangings I have on the wall behind me. These are all works of art. Unlike patents or trademarks, they're not managed by the Patent and Trademark Office. They're managed by the Library of Congress here in the US. And basically what you do is you create your work of art and automatically you have copyrights. So if you've ever seen a novel or an email or anything that says all rights reserved with the circle C, that means somebody realizes, hey, I have this creation I've made. Now I'm reserving my rights. The problem is you can't actually sue anybody and get statutory damages until you register your copyright. And the way you do that is you basically complete the forms, submit the paperwork along with a sample of whatever your work of art is, and you send it to the Library of Congress. They'll take them some time to process, but eventually you'll get a registration again, assuming nobody else has done what you've done before. If I wanted to try to claim copyright registration for a picture that looked just like the Mona Lisa, guess what? That would be really, really hard because the Mona Lisa already exists. I could not say I've recreated the same thing. That's not a new copyright. That's something old. Software can be copyrighted. The lines of code are copyrightable. They're fixed expression of something written down. There is not technically artwork, but they are ideas that I have expressed in a fixed form. The problem with a software copyright is if somebody else changes it in any way, they might avoid infringing my copyright. If they've changed the code or something like that, even say 1, 2, 3 lines out of 100 lines, that might be enough to avoid copyright infringement if those lines were part of what I have copyright protected. Lastly, I'll talk about trade secrets. Trade secrets are any business, any information, anything that gives my business a competitive advantage that I can keep secret, and I can take concrete, clear steps to keep secret so nobody else can see it. So what does that mean? What's an example of that? The formula for Coca-Cola is the single most valuable trademark that exists right now. For whatever reason, based on what's in it, you cannot reverse engineer the formula for Coca-Cola. You put it in a gas chromatograph, you do any other sort of manipulation of it, you can't find out exactly what goes into making Coca-Cola. So it's capable of being kept as a trade secret. Then Coca-Cola, the Coca-Cola company, has a very robust trade secret platform in place where they say, okay, we are limiting access to our original formula. From the stories I've heard, there is one old yellowed piece of paper that has tape on it, ink stains, water stains, whatever, that about 3 people in the world have access to. It's kept under very, very tight lock and key, very secure. Because as long as you have your protocol and your program in place to keep something a secret, guess what? It can stay secret. The downside of trade secret is, even though it could potentially last forever, as long as you keep it a secret, once it's gone, it's gone. That's it. There's no putting that genie back in the bottle. A trade secret that is no longer secret cannot be made secret again. So that's why so many companies who rely on trade secrets really take great effort to keep it secret, knowing that once it's gone, there's no getting it back. And if you get into litigation over a trade secret, say, did somebody who worked at your company try to take the secret from you, bring it to their new company, which is not uncommon, most people are very careful when they get into that litigation as to what they say about the secret in the litigation. Because even an accidental disclosure in litigation is still a public disclosure, and that will kill the trade secret. Hopefully everybody has understood this basic primer to intellectual property. I know I spent most time on patents and then trademarks, but really those are the more difficult concepts to understand. If anybody has any questions about any of these forms of IP, I'm happy to be available as a resource for you.
Perfect. Thank you so much. Do you want to give them the website, or should we put that in the description below?
Sure. So for anybody who's looking for me, you can go to our website at www.nathlaw.com, or you can send us an email at jgoldberg, that's me, at nathlaw.com.
Perfect. Thank you so much, Joshua. It's been an honor as always. Hopefully everyone here has enjoyed listening to today's episode, and I hope you tune in for the next episode where we will talk about where are you protected and is it territorial. Again, thank you so much, Joshua. Stay safe and see you next time.
Thank you very much, Martin. I'm looking forward to it.